Okay, so number one, you're adding. So you have to find the least common denominator. And I'm not sure other than multiplying these two together. So I'm just going to say 60, 5 times 12. And it may not really be the least. Okay? So on this one right here, I'm trying to make that bottom number a 60. So I'm going to multiply by 12. This one, I'm going to multiply by 5. When I do that, I get 12x over 60 plus 35x over 60. Now I have the same denominator. Any questions about what I've done so far? Now that I have the same denominator, I'm going to add this up and get 47. 47x over 60. And then I'm going to try to reduce it. I don't think I can, but you should always try to reduce it. Any questions on how to do the least common denominator? All right, next. Double negatives, so that's going to be a plus. It seems simple, but some kids still miss it. Any questions on that right there? Now that I have that one, some kids think that this is the same thing, and it's not. Okay, copy this one down. This is not double negatives. They're different. This one is double negatives. This one's not. If you do negative times a negative, you're going to miss it. You got to do the absolute value first on this one. You got to handle it differently. It looks different, and that gives you a -1. Any questions on the difference between this double negative and one that looks like double negative? Is everybody clear? Absolute value first. All right, let's move on. This one right here, you have to do your exponent first. So you like distribute. So you're going to say 3 squared and a squared times 6a to the 3rd power. Everything inside here gets a square. Well, 3 squared is 9. And so what you're going to get, 6 times 9 is 54. And then you're going to add exponents here, a to the 5th power. If you put a6, you're going to miss it. It's not a6, it's a5. The only way it would be a6 is if it was written a squared cubed. A power to a power, you multiply. So you got to know the difference, okay? If you have the same base, you have to add. Any questions about what I'm saying on that problem? Okay, those are your laws of exponents. This one right here, what I would do is first make everything positive. I don't like negatives. So in other words, this one's a negative, so I would move it up to the top. This one is a negative, so I would move it down at the bottom. This one's a negative, so I would move it down, but I already have one here. So when I move that one down, I get 2. And this one's going to be a wash. Anything over itself, you can just cancel that out. Or bring this one up and it becomes a plus, and -3 plus 3 is going to be 0. And n to the 0 power, anything to the 0 power is 1. That's why this is a wash. You can just cancel that out. Anything over itself, you can just cancel out. So whatever that is my answer. So 9 times 9 is 81. 3 to the 4th power, I have no clue. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. I guess that's 81 as well. So that cancels, and I get 1 over n squared. Any questions about what I did there? Copy it down, think about it, process it in your head. Now, I'm not sure how much of the video you could see. I'm not sure that you got this bottom scientific notation, so I'll come back to that. Let's go up to the top. Easy stuff. Okay? I tried to emphasize to you that these are not the same. This one, only the 2 is squared, not the negative. So that gives you a negative 4 for the first one, number 10. Number 11, both of these are squared. The 2 is squared and a negative is squared, so that's going to be a positive 4. Any questions about number 10 or number 11 and differences? Okay? I know some of you thought that this was a positive 4, and you may still think that, but that's wrong. Only the 2 is squared, not the negative. Okay, so process it in your head. All right, next, graph it. Now, I would like to think that everybody can graph, but realistically, I'm not going to say that. So I'm going to go -2 and then up 4 right here. And that's quadrant 2. 1 goes backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any questions about the quadrants? All right, let's keep moving. Or how to graph. Okay, I'd rather you ask me now. This one right here says find the distance. Now you should have by now the distance formula memorized. Distance formula is something like this. I have this memorized. And that's the way I do it. So copy that down. Now I'm going to substitute my x's here and my y's there. Okay? You can't mix x's and y's. Do you have a question? You need something strong? For what? Okay. Yeah, I mean, okay, no problem there. You're right. It could be domain, which would be your x's. All right. Anyway, I meant it to be distance so I can see the confusion. Anyway, so I'm going to put my x's. You were taught to go backwards, so I'll go backwards. So I'm going to say -5, -2. And then I'm going to go backwards on this one. -4 and 5. Work that out. Let's see if you can work that out. Finish it up. Now you should have a heading, day 1, and a date. So when you turn this in with your homework, if I don't see that, I probably won't even look at it because you're not doing what I'm asking you to do, and I don't want to be guessing. I want to know what it is. All right, so if I had to do it, I would change that to a plus. And -5 plus 2 is a -3. This one is a -9. So that gives me 9 plus 81. So I get the square root of 90. Whatever that is. Any questions on what I did there? Now, sometimes they ask you to extract. What that means is you got to break this up. 2 times 45. 2 doesn't work. I think 3 works. 3 goes into 4 once with 1 left over. 3 goes into 15, 5. 3 times 5 is 15. So these are all prime factors. But 2 of a kind makes a pair, like when you play cards. So this is really 9 times 10. And I guess I should have known that. 9 times 10. Because the square root of 9 is 3. So really it would be 3 square root of 10. Make sure you know how to extract perfect roots. Any questions on how to extract a perfect root? Could I have used a calculator? Yeah. But sometimes they ask you to do that. Any questions on extracting roots? Perfect roots. All right, let's move on. Midpoint. Midpoint's real simple. All you do is add up your x's, divide by 2. add up your y's, and divide by 2. That's it. It's halfway. When you're buying something and someone says, meet me halfway, that means in the middle, right? Midpoint. So here I'm going to add up my x's. That gives me a negative 7 over 2. Here I'm going to add up my y's. That gives me 1 over 2. Any questions on midpoint? All stuff that you should already know how to do. At least when you leave my class, hopefully you do. If you leave my class at the end of the year and you still didn't learn anything and you're back to the same thing, I mean, I tried. All right, copy down the rest of these. Sure. Copy all of that down. If you're sitting in the front and you're not really working when I ask you to, I'm going to probably move you in the back because I don't want to see it because it bothers me. Okay, one more minute to get this down. "30 seconds. Now some of you are like, man, I can't copy this down in a minute. I bet you if it was your girlfriend's phone number, you'd get it down. All right, here we go. Let's take a look. Scientific notation, the way I teach it, and I guess, I don't know if there's another way, but if the number is bigger than 0, bigger than 1, okay, if it's bigger than 1, it's going to be a positive exponent. If the number is less than 1, it's going to be a negative exponent. That's all there is to it. And you want one number in front. Some kids are like, well, Mr. Toops, there's no decimal here. Oh, yeah, it's right here. No, if you don't see it, it's in the back. And here it is. I don't want it there. I want it here. So I got to move it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2.74 times 10 to the positive 5th power, because that number is bigger than 1. Positive. Any questions on that? Okay, this one is less than 1, so I know it's a negative. If I know nothing else, I know it's a negative because it's less than 1. But I don't want it there, I want it in between here. So I got to go 3 places. 2.7, no, 2.7 times 10 to the negative 3. Any questions on that? Very simple. It's bigger or less. All right, let's go on. This one right here, you might want to put a star by this one. They don't look the same, so you can't add them. But actually, they are the same, because if you extract 4 times 3 is 12, and n squared times n1 is n3. You might say, well, okay, I'll give you that. Well, the square root of 4 is 2, so I can take a 2 out. The square root of n squared is n, so I can take an n out. And so now I get 2n square root of 3n. plus square root of 3n. I'm trying to make them both the same. And even though the inside here is the same now, it's still not the same on the outside. So you can't add them. But I tried. And you have to try as well. Any questions on what I did to extract to get close? I came really close. But close only counts with horseshoes and hand grenades. Is everybody clear on that? All right, let's go on. This one right here, you have to do the conjugate. And I tried to teach that to you. They don't want a radical in the bottom. So the conjugate would look like this. You got to multiply by the plus of this. You got to do 2 plus the square root of 3. 2 plus the square root of 3. That's called the conjugate. So what happens here, watch. When you do FOIL on the bottom, 2 times 2 is 4. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which equals 3. And then a negative times a positive is a negative. So you get a negative 3. You might say, well, wait a second now. What happened to the outer and the inner? The outer and the inner cancel. You see, that's a plus 2 square root of 3. That's a minus 2 square root of 3. That's the purpose of doing the conjugate. So when you do FOIL, the outer and the inner cancel out. And you get rid of that radical on the bottom. They don't want a radical on the bottom. So now you end up with a 1 on the bottom. And 1's not going to matter. So whatever you get at the top is your answer. Anyway, what do you get at the top? Well, 1 times 2 plus the square root of 3 is 2 plus the square root of 3, and you're done. Any questions on how to do that problem? How to multiply by the conjugate to get rid of the outer and the inner and to get rid of the radical on the bottom? It's just the way they want it. When you go to work for somebody and they tell you, I want you to do it like this, and you do it a different way, they're going to look you in the eyes and say, hey man, do you understand how I want you to do it? Yeah, but no, I want it this way. Okay. This one right here is a negative. The whole thing is a negative. So the way you do that is just flip it and it becomes a positive. Is everybody clear what a negative does? A negative makes it flip. Okay, I'm almost done. You can't have a radical in the bottom, so you got to multiply by the square root of 3. Am I going to do 4 square root of 3? No, the 4 is okay. I'm all right with the 4. I just can't have the square root of 3. So I'm going to multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. So I get 3 square root of 3. This is 9. The square root of 9 is 3, and 3 times 4 is 12. Now I can reduce. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 12 4, so my final answer is square root of 3 over 4. Any questions on what I said or what I did? Make sure you can rationalize the denominator. Again, the 4 is okay. I'm not worried about that. I don't want that one. So I multiply by that number. It becomes a perfect, and the square root of 9 is 3 times 4 is 12, and the 12 reduced with that 3 sitting up here. Any questions on how to multiply by the conjugate? All this was before I even got to chapter 1. This is a basic review of stuff that you are required to know. The absolute value is always positive. That's easy. This one right here, the absolute 4 is positive, but you got a negative on the outside, so that makes it a negative. Last one, FOIL. You should know how to do FOIL. Right? I showed you a shortcut. I said you multiply the first times the first. Well, x times x is x squared. Then you multiply these two times 2. I know I said that. So x times 2 is 2x times 2 is 4x. And then 2 times 2 is 4, and I'm done. And I did FOIL in my head. And so should you. Any questions on how I did it? Again, pay attention. X times x is x squared. 2 times 2 is 4. Now to get the middle term, you multiply these and then multiply by 2. What's that? Oh, okay. Thank you for that. So I did two of them, but now you got to multiply by another one. Now there's a formula that you should have memorized for this. Honestly, I'm not going to remember it. Okay, but I'm not the one testing. Would I like you to memorize it? Yeah. And he's right. It's a cube. So it's three of them. I got two here. I need one more. So it's going to take me longer, but I'm going to get my answer. So I multiply x to all of these. So I get x times x squared is x to the third power plus 4x squared plus 4x. I did that one. Now I'm going to do the 2. 2 times x squared. Let me make sure I have this right. Hang on. This should be x squared. 2 times x squared is going to be 2x squared. 2 times 4x is going to be 8x. And then 2 times 4 is going to be 8. So I'm going to get the same answer. I just don't know the formula. And I'm not sure I'm going to go back and do it. But you should, because you really should know it. But there it is. It took me long. Okay? Now, if I was testing, I'd probably save that one for last. I know I can do it. I just don't feel like doing it. Because I got to do it the long way. Any questions on your review so far? All right, so I'll let you relax for the rest of the period. You can